Hey parents, it's me again. Today I'm not going to be on video, but kind of wanted to show you a couple of things that we were working on this week in math. I kind of gave you a preview last week, but just to kind of give you an idea of what the kids have been working on. This week they worked a little bit with some geometry and trying to solve for angles of, well, we worked triangles as well as some other complex figures. The kids did a really great job with this. As they worked through these, for example, on this triangle, they had to go through and add all of our angles together. So when the students broke this down, they would go through and count how many X's they had. So here we had 3 X's. And then they would also combine what they call the constant numbers. And as I tell the kids, those are just the plain numbers. So here we had a plus 10 and a plus 5. And when they put those together, they get plus 15. The students all know that the angles of a triangle equal 180 degrees. So they would create these algebraic equations, and then they would work through those two-step equations that we worked on last week to solve for what X was. They then substituted in each of these places and solved for what each of the angles were. So something pretty impressive. If you're interested, maybe have one of the kids jump online and kind of show you what they were working on. Another thing that we got into about the middle of this week was working with solving equations that involved distributive properties. So this was kind of a new technique for them. We spent a couple of days working on this. Some of the kids are still struggling with it, but I feel for the most part, most of them are catching on. So when working with distributive property, because we have a variable here, we can't follow orders of operation. So the kids had to learn that in order to solve for A, they actually had to distribute whatever was on the outside of the parenthesis to whatever was on the inside. So for example, here 2 times A would give us 2A. They then would distribute to the second number. 2 times 7 would give us 14, so plus 14. And then they would finish writing the equation. They then also worked with combining like terms this week. So for example, here they would combine these 2 numbers together to simplify the problem so that we could get it down to a 2-step equation. They would then write it out as 2A. Positive 14 minus 7 would give us a positive 7, so plus 7 equals 9. They then continued working on their 2-step equations that they worked on last week and would solve for A. Another thing that we are just getting into here, the end of this week, is we started this very briefly in some of the classes on Thursday, but we'll get into it more here on Friday, is solving when we have variables on both sides of the equation. So the whole objective here is to actually combine and make sure that you've got all of your variables. Like in this example here, getting our X's to one side and then our constants or our just numbers to the other side. So we'll be working a lot with this on Friday and probably a little bit more into Monday. For example, here when we're working off of this equation, I would work to get the X to the right side, even though I like to have the X on the left side of the equal sign. Here it's fewer steps if I get rid of this X. So here right now it's a plus 1X. So I'm going to subtract 1X. That cancels it out. Over here I would do the same thing. So now when they simplify, they have 16, the constant by itself. And then they also would go through 9 minus 1 would give us 8X. They're now down to a 1-step equation. Now, sometimes when they simplify, like they have here on this one, they do end up with the 2-step equation that they would then solve. So that's something that the kids are working on, and there's we kind of build on each day, trying to get the kids comfortable. We will be going through more of these next week. So this next week, we're still going to continue working on variables on both sides of the equation. They'll be working on the lesson, as well as doing an activity with a partner, or we may do that as a whole group. It's just kind of building on the things and giving them some geometry to work with. We'll also be working with 1.3b is going to be working equations, where sometimes we end up solving problems where they have no solution, one solution, or many solutions. So we'll be going through and solving for those X's and then identifying based on what we have for our answer. Towards the end of next week, we'll be working with solving equations that involve more than one variable. We start out pretty basic. It looks complex, but the kids will actually, like for example, it'll ask them just to solve for one of the 2 letters. So they will end up with a letter in their final answer, a variable, sorry. And then we'll also do a group activity with that. Next Wednesday, just a reminder, we do have an early out. It's an in-service day for teachers at 1:19 or whatever. So it's a 2-hour early out. So I will be doing a computation review with the kids. We will be focusing on integers. I have quite a few kids that are struggling with the integers, and I just feel that it'll kind of help them maybe be able to go through these equations a little bit faster if they can do some of that in their head. We'll also be working on a quiz on Tuesday, and that quiz is going to be covering sections 1 and 2, and then also fractions, which I did quiz them this week, but I didn't put it in the grade book because I felt that there was more work to be needed. So I worked with some students individually this week or in small group to kind of build their skills with fractions. And then we've been working conversion since day 1. So I'll be giving them a brief quiz over conversions also. I will be putting that in the grade book at some point next week, just to kind of give you a heads up that that's coming up. Have a great weekend. Not a whole lot else going on here, but you can see the kids are super busy. Enjoy your weekend.